2 sessions ago, we heard about how AI was driving up energy demand. And now we get to talk about how AI can be used to try and offset carbon use. So I'd like to start with talking a little bit about how you founded your company, Unravel Carbon. You are a 2-time exited founder of companies. You also went onto the venture capital side. You founded a fund investing in tech startups. Now you've returned to the founder side with Unravel Carbon. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started that and what problems you were trying to solve?
Cool. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, having been both a founder and a funder, I definitely prefer being a founder. A little bit controversial there, like the torture of and rewards of building companies from scratch. So for those of you who are new to Unravel Carbon, we are an agentic platform for sustainability outcomes. We have a decarbonization platform that helps companies measure, track, reduce, and report. And this year, we made a hard pivot to be the first in the world out of Singapore to build AI agents for sustainability teams and consultants. And going back to your question on how it started, after my second exit, I was advised to write a will for my then 2-year-old daughter. She's 6 now. And I thought it was a simple process, writing a will like our parents did, paper on pencil, pencil on paper, and then that's it. But it's a complicated process for those of you who have been through that. And for some reason, my mind just went to the future, to when she turns 30 and 40. And I bumped into this whole climate crisis. And I found out that out of 400 million companies in the world, less than 10,000 were measuring their carbon profiles, and even fewer were doing something about it. And so I was like, why is this the case, right? And at the same time, 93% of the world's GDP have made net zero pledges. We have to halve our emissions as a planetary species, by 2030 and so on. So I just self-educated myself for about 9 months and, came up with the Unravel Carbon idea where we're able to ingest all sorts of raw files, raw data from a company, and show them in very granular, accurate manner their carbon profiles, their hotspots, and how to reduce them. So yeah, we're 3.5 years old, and very happy to have. We are the partner for companies like AIA, SAT, Zalora, Salad Stop, and we are used in now 52 countries.
Can you walk us through a little bit about how it actually works? If you could give us some examples of how it will digest the data and advise on how to get rid of the carbon footprint.
Yeah, so it's many people underestimate the technicality of the climate science that goes into aligning with the GHG protocol and following all the compliance requirements across jurisdictions. So how it works is that we would ingest raw data in a company, right? Most of you know this already. We either, build an API into an ERP system, like a SAP system, or we can ingest Excel files into our system. And we have built one of the largest databases of emission factors in the world. We have 1.3 million emission factors. Some we purchase, we have to purchase. And of course, we have absorbed all the government's data around the world as well, and then we use all of that to generate highly compliant and auditable profiles, and we're able to show, hey, this business unit or this business facility has higher than usual emissions compared to per revenue dollar or whatever intensity metric, or per square foot, and that deserves a double clicking too. With AI agents though, because we realize when we talk to our customers, the data part is still very difficult, right? Collecting data from 600 data owners, 1,000 suppliers, it's still a very painful project. With the platform, we could bring down the time from 10 months of a year to maybe 6 months, right? And our customers have experienced that time saving. This year, as Sam Altman says, 2025 is the year for AI agents. We built 6 agents. 3 of the AI agents are for data, data collection, data transformation and review, we could bring down that time from 6 months now to 1 to 2 months. So I am of the camp, we were sharing at the deep dive earlier, I'm of the camp that the era of SaaS is coming to an end, software as a service. It will be replaced with a multi-agentic collaboration approach where agents will work with humans and agents would also work with agents. And we just happen to be the first in the world to build that for sustainability. Because you already have, Harvey for legal, you have Glean for enterprise, you have a couple of ones for doctors or researchers, but it's always the CSOs that are often forgotten, in this kind of innovative push on the Gen AI front. And yeah, so right now our agents are able to even just read your PDF files as they are, use our OCR to transform them, parse it onto the templates, and the data review agent will check for anomalies and stuff. So it's now the agents supporting our partners and our customers' teams. So that's pretty cool.
So it's not something you can just use ChatGPT for. You've actually built a specific model for this.
No, unfortunately not. So generic LLMs like ChatGPT or any of the Anthropic's models, they do not have any domain expertise. They are very good for many different tasks, but they do not have domain expertise. So we had chosen, to build our agents on top of Anthropic Claude Sonnet. We find that it is better and more deterministic than a ChatGPT model. But both OpenAI and Unravel are Y Combinator companies, so I should support OpenAI still. But we find that the AI agents that we build needs to be infused, right, with the sustainability knowledge. So that's what our data engineers and our machine learning engineers do to add value to the wider ecosystem. For example, our gap analyzer agent can produce a 40-page gap assessment in under 1 minute. And it can be done against the ISSB IFRS S2 framework in under 1 minute. It can perform against GRI in under 2 minutes because GRI has a lot more evaluation criteria. And our team has to, the word is not train, but the word is to fine tune and to infuse the LLM that we chose to be on top of to do that. No, so you cannot use ChatGPT for sustainability use cases.
And that 1 minute, how long does it usually take someone to do it manually?
So manually, so for a company, a lot of you would have started your journeys, right? It always starts with understanding your gaps. So normally you would hire a consulting firm that would deploy 2 analysts and an engagement manager. They would take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to produce that gap report. It's also about 40-50 slides, right? So we tried to match that, but it's just done under a minute, and at the fraction of the cost. So the way we have to price AI agents is also very different. We have chosen to price it by outcome. So it's no longer by seats or by licenses, that kind of thing. So we also have to work with the procurement teams. Like, for example, CBRE has bought a bunch of our agents, right? And we have to work with the procurement team with a new type of contract, to be honest, with when we sell AI agents versus SaaS. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's very, very different. So the learning curve is quite steep. So I encourage anyone who has not paid a lot of attention to agentic AI to start doing so. I have all my reading lists. If you all want, just ping me on LinkedIn. Happy to share all that.
I mean, 7 weeks to 1 minute sounds really exciting. And as we've all started to use AI more and more, I think we also have seen the flaws of AI, hallucinations, bias, data privacy issues. What sort of risks are there associated with using Unravel Carbon?
Yeah, for sure. But even humans make mistakes, right? So I think we shouldn't focus too much on the downsides of that, because it can be controlled. Okay, so hallucination can be controlled by how you design your knowledge graphs, how you fine tune that agent, and so on. In our case, we are of the belief that we must keep the human in the loop. The human is still the master user of AI. Okay, we cannot outsource everything to AI, right? So the human sets the intention, and the human accepts the suggestion made by the agents. But in that process, you really save a lot of time, you know? You get back your quality of life, you can go and watch Brad Pitt in F1 movie. Like, you can do a lot more because you relinquish the more mundane and menial repetitive tasks or deep analytical tasks to these agents.
And when we're talking about risk, I feel like we can't really go any further and not mention Trump. How has the election in the US changed your business? What have clients been telling you? What impact has there been?
Yeah, I've actually made the unconventional move to the US this year. I have spent 5 of the 6 first months of the year in the Bay Area to expand Unravel Carbon there. So this year we opened in Japan and US, in addition to Australia and Singapore offices. And everyone was like, why are you going to the US? You know, Trump is this, that. But to me, he is one individual. It is a single presidency. It is a very powerful presidency. But if you take, for example, California is the world's 5th largest GDP. And California dislikes Trump, and Trump dislikes California, if I can say that, but maybe off the record. But California has gone on to push 2 climate bills ahead. Okay, federally, there is a pushback. We cannot rely on anything of the current administration because they don't even believe climate change is real. How can you argue with that, you know? So federally, if SEC had pushed the climate mandates ahead, we would have seen 11,000 companies being mandated to disclose, okay, scope 1 to 3 and so on. Without that, California has gone ahead with SB 253, SB 261, and SB 219. These mandates are mandating 6,000 companies. Yes, it is slightly more than half only of the full, but it's still a significant number. So any company more than $1 billion in revenue doing business with California, not just incorporated in California, doing business with California, are all will have to comply to this. So that's our focus, and we work through partners to address this captive audience.
Can you tell us a little bit about your clients? Do you work directly with manufacturers and their chief sustainability officers, or is it consultants? Who uses you the most?
Yeah, so we work directly both with end clients, and we are industry agnostic. We only cannot serve pharmaceutical companies just because the data is very debatable. But every other sector we have clients in. And we also increasingly now, with our AI agents, enable consulting firms. So my focus personally, apart from, being the CEO and doing capital raising and leadership hiring, my focus is on partnerships. So right now, it's pretty cool how the AI agents have been received by some of the largest advisory companies in the world across our jurisdiction. So Q1 was horrendous this year. I don't know if everyone else faced that, but everyone paused, right? Just to see what's happening from the US side. But Q2, Q3, my team has never been busier, but only because we had pivoted to AI agents, and that is creating a lot of value and very quick value for our partners. So these are, the big 4, the advisory firms, the audit firms. They are the ones who are embracing the use of AI agents, but the end clients as well.
And in your experience, what has been the main motivator for clients to decarbonize? Is it investor pressure, consumer pressure, regulation?
Yeah, I would say it's 80-20. 80% are still compliance driven, and 20% are voluntary driven. They just think it makes business sense, attract better talent, can sell better, and so on. We definitely want that to switch as we get closer to 2050. But if compliance can change behavior, for now, we'll take it, right? And don't forget that IFRS, US GAAP, the accounting, financial accounting mandates are only 30, 40 years old. So when it comes to non-financial metrics and GHG, these are also these are much newer, right? 10, 20 years. And it's only right now that we hope to see that mainstreaming of behavior. So in any new S-curve, in any new sector, if it's quite common that it's compliance driven and served by consulting firms at the start. And then we'll see how that change.
We're almost out of time. I just have one last question. You founded companies before, but what's been different or harder about founding a climate startup?
Do I have a whole conference for this now? No, I just think that it's very different in each geography. I think the purchasing behavior of climate technologies is very funky, like it's not very structured. Are we selling to the CSO, the CFO, the CIO, the CTO, or the investor relations, Sometimes it's even the CMO. So it's still it's very filled with froth, but I believe it will eventually become a CSO and a CFO topic, right? So we can't wait for the buying cycle and behavior to be a bit more structured and a bit more clear as basically the sector professionalizes, right? So in short, it is unclear sometimes who the buyer is, and that affects sales cycles and things like that, right? And also the sense of urgency can only be created from the top. So without that buy-in, it's very difficult, right? So yeah, how do you spot that all at the start?